Have you ever just looked at all the different animals in the world and wondered, how does it all fit together? You know, from a tiny sponge to a blue whale, there has to be some kind of logic to it, right? Well, there is. It's like a biological blueprint that connects every single creature. And today, we're going to crack that blueprint wide open and make sense of the whole animal kingdom. And just to give you an idea of what we're up against, biologists have already described over 1 million different animal species. 1 million. And that number's going up all the time. So having a clear system to classify everything isn't just nice to have, it's absolutely essential. So that's the big question, right? When you're faced with this incredible, almost chaotic amount of diversity, how do scientists even begin to sort it all out? How do they find the common threads that let them group things together and understand how they're all related? Here's the game plan. First, we're going to look at the fundamental features biologists use, their blueprint, so to speak. Then we'll see how that blueprint actually builds the tree of life. After that, we'll take a quick tour of some major animal groups, and to wrap it all up, we'll figure out exactly where we humans fit into this grand scheme. Okay, let's dive into our first section, the biologist's blueprint. The best way to think about this is like a toolkit. These are the key questions a biologist asks when they look at an animal, and the answers are what create the first huge branches in the animal kingdom's family tree. First up is the level of organization. And really, it's about complexity. Are we talking about just a loose bunch of cells working together like you'd find in sponges? Or are those cells organized into tissues like in a jellyfish? Or do they go even further, forming organs and entire organ systems, like in an earthworm or, us? This is the very first big spook. Next in the toolkit, symmetry. I know, it sounds simple, but an animal's basic body plan tells you a ton about how it lives. And it all comes down to how its body parts are arranged. There are really 2 main types you need to know. On one hand, you have radial symmetry. Think of a starfish or a jellyfish. You can basically slice it like a pizza through the center from any angle, and you'll get 2 identical halves. But then there's bilateral symmetry. That's us. There's only one way you can draw a line down the middle to get a perfect left and right mirror image. All right, now we're going to look way back to an animal's very first stage of development at its embryonic layers. Some animals are what we call diploblastic. They only have 2 of these basic layers, but many others are triploblastic, meaning they have a third middle layer called the mesoderm. And let me tell you, that mesoderm is a total game changer because that's the layer that goes on to build all the complex internal organs. And speaking of that middle layer, the mesoderm, it's also crucial for our next feature, the coelom. The coelom is basically the internal body cavity, the space where all the organs are housed. And whether or not that cavity is fully lined by mesoderm tissue is a massive branching point in classification. So this one feature gives us 3 distinct body plans. First, you have coelomates, like us, who have a true body cavity all nicely lined with that mesoderm. Then there are pseudocoelomates, which have a cavity, but it's not completely lined. And finally, you have the acoelomates, like flatworms, which have no body cavity at all. See? Just that one feature sorts a huge chunk of the animal kingdom into 3 major divisions. All right, section 2. Now that we have our blueprint, we've got organization, symmetry, and the coelom in our toolkit, let's see how these features actually come together to build the animal family tree. This right here is the big picture. Every single decision, every branch on this massive tree of life, it's all based on those key features we just talked about. This is how you take that chaos of over 1 million species and organize it into a logical structure that actually shows you how different groups are related to each other. Think of it like a biological flow chart. You start with a question. First, what's its level of organization? Just asking that immediately separates the simple sponges from basically every other animal. Next question, what kind of symmetry does it have? Boom, that splits off animals like jellyfish. And finally, what's its coelom situation? And that sorts all the remaining animals into their major groups. It's that systematic. So for section 3, let's make this a little less abstract. Let's take a quick tour through a couple of major animal groups, or phyla, to see exactly how our blueprint works with real live examples. And first up, we have the sponges, which belong to the phylum Porifera. These guys are considered some of the most primitive multicellular animals out there. They represent one of the absolute earliest branches on the entire animal tree. So if we run a sponge through our blueprint checklist, it's easy to see why they're at the base of the tree. They've got a simple cellular organization, no real symmetry to speak of, and no body cavity. What really defines them is their super unique water canal system, which is how they get food in and waste out. Okay, now let's jump way, way up the complexity ladder to the phylum Arthropoda. This is the undisputed champion of the animal kingdom. We're talking about insects, spiders, crabs, you name it. Over 2/3 of all named species on planet Earth belong right here in this one group. It's staggering. And if you look at their stats, you can see why they're so successful. They have complex organ systems, bilateral symmetry, and a true coelom. This advanced body plan is all wrapped up in their signature feature, that tough, protective exoskeleton with all those cool jointed legs and antennae. And that brings us to our last section, which is all about us. We belong to the phylum Chordata, so let's use our blueprint one last time to figure out the fundamental features that define our own special branch of the animal kingdom. So, to be a chordate, you need to have these 4 key things at some point in your life. You need a notochord, which is a supportive rod. You need a hollow nerve cord that runs along your back. You need these pharyngeal gill slits, and you need a tail that extends past the anus. Now, for humans, some of these, like the gill slits and tail, are really only there when we're embryos, but they are a fundamental part of our body plan. When you put chordates and non-chordates side by side, the differences are just wild. Look at how the body plan is basically flipped. Our nerve cord is on our back, that's dorsal, while in non-chordates, it's on their front, it's ventral. Same thing with the heart. This kind of fundamental inversion is a major dividing line between these 2 huge groups of animals. And this all leads to a really important point that can trip people up. Vertebrates, that's animals with a backbone, like us, are a major group inside the chordates. See, in vertebrates, that embryonic notochord eventually develops into our spine. But some chordates are out there that never grow a backbone at all. And that's why all vertebrates are chordates, but not all chordates are vertebrates. It's a key distinction. So there you have it, a whirlwind tour of the animal kingdom's blueprint. This system gives us an incredible snapshot of the evolutionary story built over hundreds of millions of years. It's the story of life as we understand it for now. And that brings us to one final thought. As we keep discovering new species, and as our genetic tools get even better, we might have to rewrite some of these relationships we thought were set in stone. So what will the next chapter of this story look like?